There is a shocking, life-changing event that occurs at the age of 40 in Jungkook's hand. I have here an extremely detailed image of his hands, and with clarity, I can provide clarity as a palm reader. It's just not possible with blurry images to provide any kind of accuracy. And I can see here this is a significant, impactful, shocking, utterly life-changing event that occurs at the age of 39 to 40. Good. Hello, my name is Palmist. I am the online palmistry reader, and in this video, I'm going to be going over some shocking, life-changing future event that takes place in Jungkook's hand, as well as the potential amount of children that he might have, and a few other personality aspects that I've managed to analyze. Having discovered this image, I've managed to discern a few more things about Jungkook that I hadn't managed to in my previous palm reading video. You can have a look at that if you like. Um, but looking at his character now, there are a couple of other things that I hadn't really taken into account. Notice the wasted third phalanx of Saturn here. This is always seen on the hands of people who neglect to feel a sense of reward through their own efforts. In some way, he's kind of abstaining from really allowing himself to have fun and enjoy his hard work, essentially, on quite a material level. And this is quite a sober character trait. I think it's quite a sensible one. But at the same time, it's quite sad, really, because he's not enjoying his livelihood perhaps as much as he should. This, in conjunction with what we see in the thumb, tells me that he's quite set in his ways. The thumb here is quite sort of stiff, which means that his point of view is quite fixed. And as I've mentioned in my previous video, his Jupiter finger is on the short side. This means that his idea of himself is somewhat reduced. He has a feeling of inadequacy about himself, which is actually quite sad. And again, the saddest thing of all is that it's relatively unchanged. It's not going to be easy for him to change this opinion about himself. I also mentioned in my other video that he has hands actually quite similar to Michael Jackson. I read his palm a long time ago on this channel. You can check it out over there if you like. It's probably not very good though. But he had also an inferiority complex, just like Jungkook, and we see it with these incredibly high achievers. When they achieve a new success, they have to kind of move the goalpost. These intense feelings of inadequacy can create really difficult and complex, swirling, intense kind of emotions that run under the surface and sometimes don't become addressed because actually a lot of it is due to their intensely busy lives, all in the public eye, of course, which is obviously going to make things much, much more difficult. Now, before I get to the bottom of what I see here, let's go over the amount of children that he might have. Now, these little lines here, these little horizontal lines that you see above the heart line, below the little finger, these are known as marriage lines commonly. They should be known as attachment or union relationship lines. These are much better terms for them. Not necessarily do any of these actually represent marriage at all, but the potential for it, the longer, the stronger, the greater the potential for something like marriage. The greater the depth and the strength of these lines reveal just how a person is impacted by the relationship. On the right hand, it shows a more practical material, environmental, and physical impact. On the left hand, it's far more emotional. We're, of course, looking at the right hand here. So these lines here all pertain to this much more external influences that these relationships have. And you can see here that there are a number of um, s- relationships that do certainly impact and shape him as a person. But the most meaningful is certainly later on in life, because the further up the hand, the later the relationships occur. This final relationship seen in his hands, it occurs to me, I would put this down to around about anywhere between, I would say 40 to 45. The reason why I don't like these lines, I don't like trying to discern or divine, I suppose, from these lines, is because they're just so fickle. They change all the time. And so, the hands really show us a view ahead. And this view ahead, in particular to these minor lines, changes so very often. Now, there are tiny little vertical lines that spring up and down from these relationships, and these are known as children lines. Now, again, I don't like these, and they are even more fickle than the relationship lines themselves. However, whilst I'm not going to be even attempting to analyze that, I will say that there are two other ways of trying to really get to the bottom of the amount of children a person might have in their hands, and that is this here. This is one of the family rings, and you can see two islands here. You could say, well, there's a third here. Um, I'm not convinced of that. There are at least two. That's what I am convinced of, so that's what I'm going to go with. There is a second family ring. Here's the other way of how to determine children. This is another family ring here. And you can see very clearly another two islands here. And yes, there are other things going on here, but we can say for certain that there are at least two children here ahead of him. And again, that road ahead might well change. It's not to say that he's going to have two children. Well, actually, a lot of the time, palms can really trick us, because sometimes a person, might have three or four children revealed, but actually, two of them are miscarriages, so it's not a very fair or accurate way, and I think we have to take a lot of things into account. I've seen children lines, these little vertical lines that spring up and down from these relationship lines, as pets in people's hands, because it depends on the person and how they view children, and what children means to them, and what their pets mean to them. There's so many things that need to be taken into account, and sometimes we need to know the person a little bit before even trying to uh, come to some sort of conclusion. And this is why it's so very important to look at the basic template, who we're dealing with, before getting into the nitty gritty complex Palmer line information. That said, let's get into it. Let's get into this huge revelation that I've discovered today. This shocking incident that occurs at the age of, I would say, 39 to 40. Now, timing on the lifeline or the fate line is an extremely difficult affair for even the seasoned palmist. I have been looking at this hand all morning, and I have come to the conclusion that this is going to occur at the age of 39 to 40. What is it? Well, we have here on the inside of the lifeline, occurring at the same time, a Mars line. Mars is the god of war. He helps us fight battles when we need to fight a legal battle, when we need to repair a broken bone, or quite literally go to war. Mars, a Mars line will show up when someone requires some assistance inside of the domestic sphere. And now it's the right hand, so this is potentially something that's quite physical, environmental, practical, or material. And I'm leaning more towards the physical or environmental. And when you look at this line and where it runs alongside the lifeline at the same time, there's a few things to point out here. Firstly, the lifeline itself, it becomes kind of widened, deeper, etched, stronger. There's a greater amount of energy, force here. And then all of a sudden, there is this incident here that strikes at the whole heart of what this is. And if you look alongside this as well, actually what you see here is another line connecting from the life to the Mars line. And again over here, very faintly now, you can see the makings of a square formed out of the convergence of the major Palmer line, the lifeline, and this minor Mars line. So what does this mean? Well, a square on the inside of the lifeline. The correct conclusion here is that it is isolation from society. And I've seen it on the hands of people who have been imprisoned. I've seen it on the hands of people who have been admitted to psychiatric ward, even worked on a cruise ship. But the most common sign of all, the most common conclusion is someone being hospitalized. Squares are protective. They close things off. They don't allow a person to move in some way, and that's because there's a need to protect the situation, safeguard the literal life force at that time. There's something of a threat to not necessarily his life force itself, but the way in which he's living his life at this time. Now, I've been really trying to get to the bottom of what this means this morning, whilst I've been looking at his hands now. If I had seen the lifeline beginning again anew on the inside here with something of an overlap, a break, I would think that this is a physical accident, an incident. He breaks a bone, he goes into hospital. It absolutely affects his career. But I don't see that. What in fact I see is actually it looks like there's this striking, shocking, sudden event here that's a massive obstacle in the way in which he's living his life here. There's some threat to the way he's living his life. And after this time, there's something of an island here. And whenever we see an island, it's the energies are um, diverting. It's like there's something in the way of the river, and it's having to meander around. That's why there's literally an island here in the middle of this river. When the life force is stressed to have to adapt like this, it shows literally stress itself. It shows there is an obstacle that is so great that he's having to literally change his life. What could this be? Well, notice how this shocking event here, this obstacle, is quite far reaching and it reaches inside into the Venus Mount itself. The inside the Venus Mount is the domestic sphere. It's the right hand, so we're looking and we're considering the bodily, the physical. Absolutely, it could be something to do with his health, but it also could be something to do with his family, close friends. Now, when the lifeline moves outside of its original course, it shows a person who is quite literally having to move themselves outside of their familiar environment. It shows he is quite literally he's having to move at this time. He's having to pick things up and move and adapt. So there likely will be some travel at this time due to this event, this shocking event. It affects his fate lines, both of them as well. So we know that this affects his purpose, his destiny, his path, his focus on what he wants to do with his life. This affects his career. This is no small trial. This is a period of a few years, maybe three, 3 years, 4 years, and it's going to be significantly difficult for him. Now, to corroborate what we've just seen on the lifeline, if you look at the fate line here as well, it's going strong. This is 35. As the fate line rises up from the headline, this is the headline right here. This is 35, and then when it gets to around about the age of 40, possibly it looks like 41 on the fate line here. Things get a lot weaker. Things get a lot. It's a struggle. The focus, the effort, the energy that he's putting into his life path at this time is not as rewarding. It means that he is not as able to continue on this prosperous path that he is on before this time. And slowly you can see it change course. Now, I don't see any massive negative ramifications towards his career. I don't see the same thing in so much as I don't see a gigantic square. There's not the need to protect financially. I don't think this is a severely, life-changing event that's going to affect his career in any way. But I do think that it affects the way in which he lives his life. So to me, this could be physical, or it could be environmental in some way. Maybe it's got something to do with family, a relationship potentially. And then I can't help come back to the relationship that he's going to have, the much more meaningful one that he's going to have much later in life. Then things get actually really interesting because when I look at this period of great difficulty and this absolute need to adapt and change his lifestyle and potentially even move, and I don't think it's a great distance, but it is a significant change. Things After this time, things seem really good again. Things seem great, and then there's a move, and this is a long distance move. This is significant travel. And I put this down to around about the age of 50. If you look really closely here, you can see this little line that moves away right out into lunar here. And this occurs on the lifeline at the age of around about 50. Now, this coincides with what we see here. So could his potential future partner be someone who's foreign or from a different place? Maybe he moves with them. I don't know. But why it gets interesting for me is when I look at the fate line after this time, it takes a completely different direction. It does, in fact, two things, it seems. Firstly, it's after the age of 53, it's really and strongly pointing towards Jupiter, which shows that he's falling into some sort of leadership role, an expertise type role where people look up to him, take his advice. He is some sort of mentor, teacher, guide in some way, and he is providing his profound and great experience and knowledge, and he's passing this on. And then, when we look at this quite closely here, you can see this secondary line very faintly that's deciding to rise up and drive its way towards Apollo, Mercury, forgive me. It rises up towards Apollo and then kind of drifts towards in between Apollo and Mercury. And really, what this is showing is that he is working towards absolute freedom. Mercury is the finger of expression and communication. Freedom is required in order to allow us to express and communicate. There needs to be freedom of expression, and that's what I'm getting here. There's a strong need for that. Now, Apollo is all about success, joy, happiness, monetary gain, reputation, vanity, and our skill sets, our talents, and our creativity. The two kind of go hand in hand. And you can see why when you just kind of reel off the attributes that they both represent. Mercury, there's a lot more to say about it, skills, memory, physicality, language. So when we see a line that's kind of working its way up towards these two, this is a combination of both a sun line and fate line, it seems. In many respects, Jungkook's future is absolutely uncertain in terms of his career. There's a great path ahead of him that is yet to be fully laid out. And this really shows me that he has great access to carve his own destiny. And it also shows me that things can't really be revealed yet until this occurs. But what is certain is that he will achieve a level of access to freedom as well as privacy as well. A lot of the things that he's not getting at the moment in his life. Truthfully, I don't know with great certainty what this is. It could be an illness. it could be it could be a legal battle. I think if I had to lean, um, I would say it's a potential illness of some sort. And that's a fairly specific prediction. I know obviously I could be wrong about this, but that's where I'm leaning at the moment. In any case, I'd like to know what your thoughts are. I will be creating a Q&A video on Jungkook's, and please do ask me any questions. Let me know what your thoughts are on this video. Please do feel free to subscribe and perhaps consider becoming a member as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and I shall see you on the next one.